You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. And now, in Disney.
Well, here we go, another Sunday afternoon up here in New England, and we're glad to have you. But you know, the Watchtower's turbulence is continuing to get worse. They are getting in more and more trouble all around the world. We'll be talking about that next on JW World News. Well, there you have it, my friends. I have to tell you, things are really happening in the Watchtower. I know I always say to you guys every Saturday night that I'm a happy camper, and I really am very, very happy to see what's going on behind the curtains of this evil organization. Yes. So my name is Rick Fearon. I'm coming to you from the hub of the universe, right up here in Boston, Massachusetts. Hey, this is where it all comes together. We always call it the apostate capital of the world. But, I'm proud. I am so proud to be in the company of so many good apostates. And my goodness, some people don't like the term, and I understand that. I do understand it, but we are, by definition, we are standing away from the teachings of the Watchtower. That makes us an apostate. And I'm going to tell you something. I looked this up in the last week or two here. There's many cults. There's many cults out there, right? We got the Christian Scientists. We've got Scientology. We got the Moonies. We got the Mormons. We got Jehovah's Witnesses. And there's numerous more. But the reason why I bring this up is I was wondering what cult gets the most searches in Google. So, I just put that into Google and it came up. The cult that gets the most searches in Google, you guessed it, Jehovah's Witnesses. What does that tell you anything? If you were working for the CIA, what would you do? In other words, you have to gather intelligence. So when I see Jehovah's Witnesses are getting the most searches in Google, I'm gathering intelligence. That is telling my brain something. That means that a lot of people are looking up Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, are these witnesses themselves? Well, that's one explanation. Are these people who have relatives that are Jehovah's Witnesses? Well, that's another explanation. Or are these people, they might be studying, or maybe the witnesses have been knocking on their doors of late because they're back out on the field ministry. So I'm wondering, well, maybe they're just people that are inquiring into this religion. And when you get on, the sad part about it is all of a sudden the internet unloads on the person checking Jehovah's Witnesses out. There's not too much to be said that's good. Everything that's said is bad. And that's why there's many people waking up right now. You heard it from Christine. She was just on here and she said, but really one of the things that got her thinking is her son gave her a link to YouTube with the Australian Royal Commission. And she looked at that and said, I don't want no part of an organization that's covering up child abuse. So, how many people are getting out now and seeing this stuff? It's all over. There's a proliferation of all information you could possibly think about all over the internet, YouTube videos. There are forums. There are tons of forums. JWN, Reddit. And then in Reddit, there's 6 or 7 different forums for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. Then we have podcasts all over the place talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. We've got television programs on some of these cable networks talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. So how can you possibly miss it? So there's a lot of people getting out right now. So I'm saying here today, and I don't mind saying it, that the Jehovah's Witness game, Jehovah's Witness gig, if you want to call it that, is over. The monkey died, the circus is over, as we say. Now, who's left in the organization? If you go into a Kingdom Hall today, who in their right mind is possibly left in there? But I'm not in any way trying to dismean people or people who might have mental difficulties. But the only ones that would be left, at least in my way of thinking, in my opinion, the only ones that would be left in the organization are the ignorant, the arrogant. Well, what do I mean by arrogant? Did you know arrogant witnesses? And I tell you what, they would go down fighting even though they know it's wrong. They're staying with this organization. Those would be the arrogant. And there's some of those still left in there. And it'll also be some that are afraid. Look at when you have Armageddon pounded into your head and it's right around the corner. And if you leave Jehovah, you're going to get hit with a big giant hailstone. You'd be afraid, right? So there's people who are afraid to leave. But then we also have to understand that I'm not going to say the average witness, but I'm going to say there's many, 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 many Jehovah's Witnesses in their organization that only have they have a fifth grade mentality. You're 11 years old when you're in the fifth grade. Do you remember that? Do you remember your teacher's name in the fifth grade? Many do. Well, you know something? That teacher had a hard job. A teacher teaching fifth graders has a very hard time because, some kids are going to come in, they're going to say, well, I believe in Santa Claus. Santa Claus is coming to my house for Christmas. And many believe in the Easter Bunny. They believe in the Tooth Fairy. But, that's 11th grade mentality. You don't know yet. You're kind of coming into the adulthood and you're still a kid and you're trying to be an adult at the same time. So some kids would kind of leak out, there's no Santa Claus. Then the teacher would try to say, well, keep that down, keep that down. So that's what's going on right now, even in the congregations. There's a lot in there with a fifth grade mentality. And the teachers, the elders, they just want to keep you where they are. They don't want you to really get any information anywhere, any place. The best places, they always said, if you read the Awake magazines, you will be smarter than someone going to college. You don't need the Encyclopedia Britannica. Remember that years ago? Before the internet, you had a big set of encyclopedias, like fill a whole bookshelf. But, they would say, you don't need that. Don't buy the Encyclopedia Britannica. You don't need that. Just read the Awake magazine, and you'll be as smart as someone who's got a college degree. I can't believe that. But, I mean, the witnesses did believe it, and maybe then I kind of thought about it, too. I thought it was pretty neat. Oh, we're really smart here. We're intelligence. Well, anyways, let's take a look here what we got. We know the Watchtower has had many failed predictions. They failed in 1914. They failed in 1925. I had no idea of that when I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't see this. I didn't hear about Beth Sareem. And you find out about that, you go, that was kind of crazy. Well, witnesses bought a mansion in San Diego, California to house the patriarchs coming back from old. When you leave, I didn't hear any of that stuff when I was in the witnesses. And I had no idea about child sex abuse. Oh, I trusted everybody. They're Jehovah's Witnesses. I never even thought. In fact, I don't even remember knowing what a pedophile was until I started doing these programs. I never focused on it. And then, of course, the witnesses, many are finding out that, they say that Jerusalem was destroyed in 607 BCE. Okay, they're wrong in that too. It's actually 587. But all you can do with the internet's only a mouse click away. One mouse click and bingo, there it is right in front of you. So I have to say that information that's being gathered is destroying the Jehovah's Witness organization. And, I mentioned this last night, and I'm going to mention it again. I wanted to buy a toaster. You like toast? I don't know if you tried this Dave's Killer Bread, but boy, you toast that. That's good bread. Now, I wanted to buy a good toaster to toast the bread because I had a crummy one. So, what do you think I did before I bought the toaster? I went on Google. What is the best toaster? What has the best ratings? Well, then I bought the toaster that did. I went to Kohl's. I bought the exact one that had the 5 stars. So if people do that, if people search the internet before they even buy a toaster, don't you think people would search the internet if they're starting to just learn about Jehovah's Witnesses? Don't you think that if the witness is coming to your door and they knock on the door, here's some magazines, we got a great message for you, and why don't you come and be with us and study with us? Hey, if I checked out toasters, these people are going to Google Jehovah's Witnesses, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not. The internet is the cancer to the cults. It really, really is. And the witnesses are dying. At one time, it was a slow, painful death, like 1,000 cuts, as the saying goes. But it's not that way anymore. The Jehovah's Witnesses are dying rapidly. They are on life support. So I just wanted to bring that up. And as Constance mentioned earlier, I've always said, since I've been coming on here on the 6 screens, I've always said that the internet is the great equalizer. All right, let's move on. We talked about this back in 2018. If you guys remember, there was a man who was lighting fires to Kingdom Halls in Washington State. Yes, indeed there was. We talked about it. We were asking here on the 6 screens, well, who do you think this would be? And this man actually took a gun and fired numerous shots at a Kingdom Hall. And we're saying, well, who would this be? Who would be irate enough to, be attacking Kingdom Halls? And we always thought, well, it must be somebody that was disfellowshipped, or maybe somebody got divorced because the witnesses poking their nose in the whole arrangement and ticked this person off. And they knew it was a man because there was always video surveillance of a person with a hood on. It was a man. You could tell it was a man. So it was showed him kneeling down and trying to light a fire in front of the Kingdom Hall door. But anyways, good news this week. The FBI, the ATF, the local sheriff, and the Arson Alarm Foundation, well, they finally caught their man. In fact, there was a $61,000 reward out for information leading to the arrest of this arsonist. Now, this arsonist, it just wasn't a one-time event. I mean, that's bad enough. That's a felony. That's a big-time crime. But there were actually 7 attacks on Kingdom Halls and assembly halls. I believe there was one assembly hall involved in it as well, and one shooting involved. The person actually shot at a Kingdom Hall and caused a $10,000 worth of damage. But I'm not going to go into all the attacks like I did last night, but trust me when I tell you there was 6 Kingdom Halls, it looks like, 1 assembly hall, and also an attack with a firearm where he actually fired a rifle many rounds into a Kingdom Hall. It caused $10,000 worth of damage. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here, the man's name was Michael Jason Laves, or AKA Mickey Diamond Starrett. Well, he was a professional and still is a professional biologist who runs his own business. So I'm saying, well, what in goodness name's sake? He's not even one of Jehovah's Witnesses. The article did not say he was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but wait a minute. There's a Jehovah's Witness tie-in here. Michael Jason Laves, we'll just call him Michael. He was the guy that the FBI says did this, and the reason they found out is because on his computer he had search Google for Kingdom Halls and, their locations and what have you. So this kind of alerted the FBI. This guy's doing something. And also he left somehow, some way, he left something behind that led the authorities to realize it was him. But what I'm thinking here, as I thought a couple of years ago when we reported this story, is this a mad, irate apostate So we're learning that he wasn't an ex-Jehovah's Witness. In fact, he never was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But this is what Lays, or Michael here, Michael Lays, told the officials on why he did this to the kingdom halls. He said to them that he was haunted by spirits who told him to do bad things. Oh, I guess that would be kind of bad, shooting bullets, trying to burn down kingdom halls. I'm thinking, what if people were in these halls? And unfortunately, they weren't when this was going on. So at least this arsonist, at least he wasn't trying to kill anybody. He was just trying to put the kingdom halls out of business. So anyways, this Lays character, Michael Lays, he says that what happened, he explained to the authorities that spirits that were haunting him are spirits of dead Jehovah's Witness relatives of an ex-girlfriend. Yeah, you heard it right. I'm trying to wrap that around my head as well. So he's telling the authorities that he's being haunted by spirits of dead Jehovah's Witness relatives of his ex-girlfriend. I mean, I can jump to conclusions here, like you're probably jumping to conclusions. The only thing I can say, and he doesn't say here in the paper, but the only thing I can jump to here is his ex-girlfriend evidently was one of Jehovah's Witnesses at one time. Yeah, she was one of Jehovah's Witnesses at one time. And evidently the Jehovah's Witnesses messed her life up and probably even messed Michael Lay's life up. And maybe they didn't want her to have anything to do with him. So he just did not like this idea of the witnesses coming into his life. So he came up with this vendetta to burn down kingdom halls. But also the family and friends of Michael. Oh, yeah, the family and friends of Michael, they said that he was heavy on drugs. He's heavy. He used a lot of alcohol. So he had serious mental issues. And of course, Michael denies all of these accusations. Oh, I didn't do it. I'm a good man. I didn't burn the kingdom halls down and shoot firearms at it, shoot bullets at it. So what's happening? He's in jail right now. And Michael is denying these crimes. But the Attorney General in Washington State, Attorney General Garland, well, he says he needs a little more time. Keep Michael in jail, because what Garland is trying to come up with is hate crimes. Oh my God. I'll tell you what, that's one thing you don't want to be accused of, is a hate crime. It's one thing to be accused of a crime, but when you're accused of a hate crime, oh my goodness, that now is a federal offense. This could really put this man away for a long time. And the hate crime, of course, would be attacking a place of worship. You cannot do that. You cannot do that. So it comes under the guidelines of a hate crime. Well, there you have it. I mean, that's not good news, is it? It's not good news at all. I mean, you hate to see the only thing, but I'm extracting something out of here. I'm extracting something that got me thinking. There's more to the story. There's pieces of the story missing. This man had a personal vendetta against the Jehovah's Witnesses. Go ahead, you're on with us.
Hey, this is Chewy.
Yes, Chewy.
I think we're gonna come along to the same point of view. Something happened to him in the past to have a reaction like that. You just don't pick out a church. He didn't do it to other churches. He didn't do it to Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, whatever. He did it to Jehovah's Witnesses. There's a reason for that. And I don't know what that reason is, but it'll be very interesting if we find out about it. It could have been he was abused when he was young, or perhaps, maybe he knows somebody that was abused and they didn't do anything about it. Who knows? Who knows? It's an interesting thing. We'll have to see. And the only other thing I'm going to say, and then I'll mute myself, is my wife was talking to. She's preparing for a part here in a couple of weeks or whatever, and her householder or whatever is an elder's wife, pioneer sister. They had to go 4 hours one way to a half a day pioneer meeting because they had their circuit assembly yesterday, and they made those four brothers and sisters drive from where I live at to Amarillo, Texas, for a half a day pioneer meeting. 4 hours one way.
Oh, that's cruel. That's cruel.
Yeah, why not put it on Zoom? Why not put it on Zoom for the ones that live way out?
Geez, that costs
and
costs
they're struggling.
money and gas. You run the risk of even getting an accident traveling that far. That's not sensible. No, it's not.
No. Anyway, all right. I'll talk to y'all later.
Well, thank you, Chewy. Yeah, but that's ridiculous, isn't it? 4 hours to when you could have done it on Zoom. So the Watchtower's no feeling for you. But I'm glad to see all of these articles about the Jehovah's Witnesses, and this one here was the biggest story all week long. What I'm going to tell you right now is the biggest story all week long in the world of the Jehovah's Witnesses. And just to give you an idea what I'm talking about here, have you heard about the ICSA? The ICSA. Well, I'll tell you what that is, and I was so glad to read about this in the newspapers. Well, anyways, the ICSA, it's an acronym, and it stands for the International Inquiry Child Sex Abuse. So this is going on right now in England and in Wales, and they now have a final report. The ICSA, they have been looking into not just Jehovah's Witnesses, but they've been looking into, businesses, corporations, religions, schools, wherever children could be molested. And they came out with a report. They've been doing this, I guess, for a good part of 10 years. But finally, the report came out. And I'm going to tell you, what I really saw in that report really, I just felt good when I read it, because a good part of the report was about who, you guessed it, Jehovah's Witnesses, and how they've been hiding child molesters for years. And, the rank and file has no idea of that. They don't. And the report was saying there was 100 men in positions of responsibility in their congregations in England and Wales. Now, 100 men, Jehovah's Witness men in responsible positions. Now, that would say elder, that speaks ministerial servant. So that's what I'm thinking. So we have 100 men in positions of responsibility in Jehovah's Witness organization that were accused of child abuse. These weren't just ones covering it up. They were accused of child abuse over a 10-year period. So how does the Watchtower really combat this type of negative, bad news? Well, I looked up what the Watchtower does in their pages, their phony baloney Watchtower magazines, in the Watchtower of May 2019, as all of this is coming out. I mean, since 2002, since the Dateline program, this has all been coming out about Jehovah's Witnesses covering up child molesters. So in the Watchtower 2019 May, it says that the men that are coming in with these bad ideas and doing these bad things to children, they are perpetrators. They are wicked men. The Watchtower at least acknowledges it, but they call these men that are doing this in the organization imposters. They're saying they snuck into the congregation and they're imposters. They found their way into the congregation, and some professing to be part of the congregation have succumbed to perverted fleshly desires and have sexually abused children. Well, shame on you. That's a lie. That's a bald-faced lie, what the Watchtower is saying here. It's just a cover-up, but the Watchtower is good at it. The one thing Watchtower is good at is covering things up. Yes, and the one thing Satan, the devil, is good at is lying. So you can even find some good in things that are bad, right? So this final report from the Independent Inquiry into child sexual abuse in England and Wales, it's going to require certain things. Now that the government over there has found out what Jehovah's Witnesses are doing and clergymen are doing too, they're going to now require that individuals will have to report any incidents they hear of sex abuse in their organization, whatever it would be. And if they fail to do so, circumstances could lead very quickly and easily to a criminal offense. And the criminal offense could put these people away, including elders. Now, not only should the Watchtower be shaking in their boots, because this is happening now pretty much all over. People are finding out how bad the Jehovah's Witness religion is. Now, there's also a secondary concern that witnesses here should be very, very unhappy about, and it has to do with redress. Do you know what redress is? Well, that happened over there in Australia with the Australia Royal Commission. Well, what a redress is someone's going to now pay for damages. So if you have a person that's been abused and it was covered up, and the person's life really just turned out to be so rotten and miserable, and they lost jobs and maybe got into drug abuse or whatever, there's some financial punitive damage here that could be given to the Jehovah's Witnesses or anybody that covers up child molestation. And this redress could be into the thousands of dollars. So if you're an elder listening to this program, and we talked about this when we talked about this similar thing happening now in the state of Illinois, you're going to have to report. But, the Watchtower, according to the Shepherd book, the secret elder book, they want, the elders to call the organization first, and then the organization will tell them. Friends, don't even do that. If you're an elder and you've heard about abuse, you know about abuse, please just go right to the authorities and get you off the hook and get it on record. You're actually coming forth and telling them. That way there, you're off the hook. There's so much there. I went through the whole report, and there's article after article. But what I get out of it and what I extract of the major importance is that people are not going to be able to get away with those. I'm a clergyman and I have penitent privilege. And even though everybody else has to report it, I don't, because it's in confidentiality and I'm trying to protect the interests of the people. That argument is going. And all this week, it's really a sick week for some of the stories that I've been reading in the Watchtower. And a lot of them have to do with sexual abuse of children. Isn't that one of the most heinous, evil crimes that you can think of? I have no idea how this comes into people's heads. Obviously, they're perverted, and I don't know if it has to do with sex or not. I've had people come on the program and said, Rick, it's really not about sex. When a pedophile violates a young person, it's more about control than sex. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor, but I'll go with that too, because that makes sense to me. Now, if a person was that sexually deviated, perverted, well, you could go out and find sex, I guess, right? The state should make it legal. So you go out and you find something that will satisfy you. Why would you have to pick on a little kid and ruin their life forever? So maybe a good part of it is about control. I would think that may be one of the major issues here. But anyways, in Washington State, now you're not going to believe this. So in Washington State, they have no law at all. It's the only state, or I believe maybe one other, but it's the only state, I do believe, that has no mandatory reporting. Yeah. So if you're a clergyman, or you're actually involved in the church and you hear about sex abuse, you don't have to tell anybody about it. But the whole thing it's about 20 years ago, right here in Boston. Well, we had the Cardinal Law. That was his name. He was a cardinal for the Catholic Church in the Boston Globe newspaper. That exploded everything. That's when all of this sexual abuse started coming out. And, we never realized the churches were covering this up, and especially the Catholic Church. Well, that's back 20 years ago, that scandal broke. And so this one particular representative in Washington State, her name is Mary Lou Dickerson. Well, she wanted to make sure, and she started this years ago, to get the state of Washington, to get that state to get their act together and make laws that people have to report this. But they keep dragging their feet. For years, the state of Washington kept dragging their feet, and they still do not have a law against mandatory, in other words, a law for mandatory reporting. So you say, well, how does that ever happen in a civilized society? Well, Washington state, they feel that religion should have a hatch here where they can escape reporting. People come to the Catholic Church, they come to their pastors, and they confide in them. And many in the Department of State there in Washington, they feel that they'd be, stepping on people's confidentiality rights. But that's all going. This is one of the last states to really hold on to that. But what was kind of interesting that I came across, and I'm going to put it up if you guys are watching on YouTube. I want to put up on here, there was a woman, her name was Mariah. I'll put a picture up on here. You guys will see her coming up here shortly. So let's get Mariah up. And here she is right here. Now you see her right there. That is an ex-Jehovah's Witness woman. Her name is Mariah. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about poor Mariah. This was in a newspaper out of the state of Washington, and they really looked into the problems Washington has by not reporting sexual child abuse. Now, who comes up with the Jehovah's Witness organization? Yes, in this newspaper, though, I'll tell you what, they're really looking at the witnesses closely. And Mariah, she was a Jehovah's Witness, and she claimed that elders in Washington knew of sexual abuse allegations but did not alert law enforcement, resulting in more children being abused, not just Mariah. So this is why they're pushing this one article with this ex-witness. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses have got to be reading this. I can't imagine that none of this is hitting some of the witnesses. There's newspaper articles, television programs. But anyways, you can see why it's so important that they get these mandatory reporters put in place. So the man, in fact, that raped Mariah, well, he was a Jehovah's Witness, brother Elihu Rodriguez. Yes. Well, actually, he's being sued. He's being sued for actually covering it up. He knew about it, and he allowed this all to happen. And actually, I guess he was the man. Not only did he fail to protect Mariah, but he was the man that actually, he's got a felony charge against him anyways, and looks like he's in prison. So that's good. So each state, as we know it, has their own requirements dictating who must report child abuse. Now, I'll give you some stats here you might like. 43 states list clergy as mandatory reporters. So 43 of these states, out of 50 states, they are now saying that they list 43 of them that clergy has to report. So that means Jehovah's Witnesses. So whatever those 43 states are, it doesn't list them. But what happens, there now comes a broader definition under reporting. So even though in these 43 states, Jehovah's Witnesses and other clergy have to report, 31 of these states out of the 43 have what's called clergy penitent privilege. So it's a loophole. It's a loophole. And this is how the Jehovah's Witness organization and many of these other perverted organizations have been escaping the hatchet of the state. Yeah, they found this legal loophole. Well, it's penitent privilege. And just like I told you, it's they're protected under the basis of someone coming to them, an elder, a priest, and seeking spiritual advice during confession, and it's supposed to be confidential. So even though 43 states list that clergy has to be mandatory reporters, 31 of those states have this penitent privilege. That has got to be removed. But see, religion is the issue. It's the First Amendment, right? You have the right to worship. You have the right to religious freedom. So, of course, they're always going to bring that up. So, but in the meantime, the only ones that are getting hurt by state legislators, government officials, delaying. The only ones getting hurt here is little children that are really having their whole life ruined. It's sad. I mean, there's a lot more to the story, but I think you know enough. You don't have to know anymore. All right. So, anyways, I came across this thought here. Online circuit assemblies, but we still need the money, says Watchtower. Well, it's not making sense. I say this popping up a number of times in some of the forums I get into. A lot of people, they're still not meeting for circuit assemblies or conventions. It's still all online. Now, beginning next summer, it looks like the witnesses will be returning to in-person conventions for 2023. But here's what we got here. Many people are starting to say, now, wait a minute. You want us, we're on Zoom. We're going to our circuit assembly on Zoom, and you still are requiring that we donate. But what are we actually donating to? You know, the circuit, we're not there. Nobody is in the circuit assembly. It's all being done out of Watchtower Studios. So what's the deal here in asking for donations, requesting donations when we don't even meet there? So people are kind of upset about this. Friends, I have to tell you, and you know it anyways. I mean, I know you know it. The whole circuit assembly arrangement, the money they take in, it's a big time racket. The circuit assemblies, the conventions of Jehovah's Witnesses as well, they're part of a big money-making racket. Yes, it's a great fundraiser for the Watchtower. And what really is sickening here is some of these assembly halls have been sold off, and the Watchtower has collected the money. But at the same time, you know, it's been sold off, and that's the convention, the assembly hall I used to go to, but they still want money for it. And it's not cheap either. They're not asking, you know, in view of us not meeting, you know, we still do have some expense. No, they're not even mentioning that. They're not even cutting the expenses back at all. They expect you to give as much money as you did as if you were going there in person. So there's something wrong with that. And don't you remember, you guys look at you, we all were witnesses. We all kind of understand each other here. But can you remember at the conventions, but mostly at the assemblies, you would really pay attention to it. You know, before the last talk, a couple talks before, that have a brother come out, and he would always announce that, well, friends, we were so glad the last assembly that we had at this arena or this wherever they were having it. The last assembly we had an excess of $5,000. And what we did with that, we want to show Jehovah our appreciation. The brothers unanimously wanted to send that extra $5,000 to the Watchtower. So that's that's what they mentioned. And then they go into the concluding talks. And then they come back right before the last talk and they say, well, we're kind of happy, friends, that we're getting very close to what we have to have for funds, but we are short. We're short by about $3,000, and we know Jehovah is going to put it in your heart. Well, you know, just previously they told you they sent the excess money. Why didn't they keep that? No, they sent that to the organization, and now they're asking you to make up the deficit. I mean, that would be like, look, you take a loan out from the bank. He says, okay, Rick, I'm going to give you $2,000. Here it is. Here's a loan for you. Oh, fine. Oh, I have to pay it back, right? Oh, yeah, I got to pay it back. So, you know, come in next month to make a payment. So then I come in next month and I say to the banker, well, I don't have the money for you. I spent it on something else. Well, that's basically what's going on here in the Watchtower. They're not being transparent about this. So they're telling the people, fine, we spent the money, and now, you know, it's up to you to pay the difference. So the point would simply be here, they're not being transparent at all with their money. And in churches, regular churches, for the most part, from what I've heard, that churches are transparent. that they have people who understand books. They're not, some window washer that comes in part-time to do the books. They have people who audit the books, and they make sure that every penny is accounted for. And they're very, very transparent. But the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're never accountable for anything. They can get away with whatever they want. And this is exactly what they do. And in fact, I was in touch with one former elder who was involved with circuit arrangements and assemblies. And he was mentioning to me the game they play. Now, this is a little while ago, so I think the same game is played. But anyways, what they would do is, these are the assembly hall that I attended here up in Natick, Massachusetts. It had room for 2,000 people. So what you do here is you start playing with some numbers. And what this elder was saying is that what they would do is they would put a dollar amount on each head. In other words, each person coming to the assembly. So if it was $10 per head, and you had 2,000 people coming, well, you can run the numbers on that. That's $20,000. Hey, that's a big chunk of change, isn't it? So you're looking at $10 a head, and that's what you're hoping to get. And if you fall short, you just pressure the witnesses to dig a little deeper. So then if they don't hit the 20, or they don't see they have the 20, they're going to hit you up for a little more to try to make it up. Now, I'm going to tell you, we had a woman on here. You guys heard the story, I'm sure, a million times, but I'll tell you again if you haven't. There was a woman that came on here years ago. Her name was Lorene Stanley. And her husband was a big muck at the conventions, a big administrator or whatever. So she got the job of being one of the money counters at the regional, or then it was district conventions. So Lorene would be in the back, and she says, those like apple baskets, those wooden baskets, you pick apples and put them in there. She says they had these, a bushel basket is what it would be, right? So she said they had a bunch of those bushel baskets, and they were taking, all the people who sat there with those big wooden, big cardboard boxes that you had to walk by, and, some older handicapped witness would be sitting there, and all put some money in. So they'd be wheeling these money boxes into the back room where they would count it, and they'd empty the money baskets and then put them into these bushel apple baskets. And she says they had many of them back there filled. So anyways, she's counting money, and, they're getting close to announce, because they do a non-transparent job at announcing how much they took in. So she says, oh, look at brother. Oh, we have such an abundance of money that came in, and boy, all the baskets are full, and boy, it looks like we're meeting our payment amount that we have to have for this convention. And so the brother said, well, see that basket there was filled with cash, she said. And so the brother said, well, no, let's not count that basket. Let that basket be, because that basket would have brought them over the amount. So then you get a brother come out, oh, brothers and sisters, yes, we are $5,000 short, but we know Jehovah's going to put it into your heart. You know how they would say it. So she shared that with us. I mean, people really were flabbergasted. So anyways, did you ever go in the back room where they count the money? Have you ever had the privilege of doing that? Have you ever had the privilege of going in the back room where, when the speakers come down off the stage, they go into the back room, especially at big conventions? I have been in there, and not by an invitation, but I pushed my way in there. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But, there's back rooms where the brothers, they get off the stage and then they go into the back room. And these rooms are filled with all the brothers and sisters, the muck witnesses. They're eating, expensive cheesecake, not those Sara Lee cellophane packed cheesecakes we used to get. They're eating beautiful, expensive cake and cookies, and even drink. Now you're gonna say, wait a minute, Rick, are you telling me that they drink alcohol at a convention? Did you ever think of that? I mean, I'm sure there's many in the audience that are nipping, but did you ever think that in the back room of where the brothers meet when they get off the stage and the mucks all meet with each other, would you ever think that booze was allowed? Well, let me tell you something. I have information. Now, I'm not going to go on the record to say that you have to believe me, but I believe it. As a matter of fact, let me tell you something. There was a man, and he was a good friend of mine. He was a Jehovah's Witness elder, and he was with food services for our regional, or at the time, district conventions here in New England. And anyways, I'll just go with his name. His name was Frank. I won't give you his last name. But Frank was he was the guy that was responsible for making sure the food got there and the trucks coming in and all of the Shasta soda and the Sara Lee cheesecakes and all of that got into the facility. He was responsible for that. But you know what? He told me, and I have no reason to disbelieve Frank. He told me that what they did, there's a lot of pressure, he said, on the brothers giving talks on stage. And, it is. Did you ever get up in front of a group of 40, 50,000 people? Try that. That's not an easy thing to do. You can get stage fright very easily. So what he told me, that the organization allowed for some use of alcohol. Now, I'm not talking about, Tony Morris amounts. I'm not talking about that at all. But they would give this Frank friend of mine some money, some cash, and then send him out to the liquor store prior to the convention where he worked with food service. And he went out and he bought a big bag full of alcohol. And he says, Rick, the Watchtower said they could have a little bit to take the edge off, but don't drink a lot. Now, I know you're saying, come on, Rick, did that really happen? Well, I have to tell you, I had no reason to disbelieve this guy. No reason at all. So, think about that. Think about that. It's amazing what goes on behind the curtains of the Watchtower. Well, you're on JW World News Sunday edition, and I'm glad you're on here with me. Did you have a booze overseer? Did you have a booze overseer who was the one responsible for getting the booze? Well, I got another story here to talk about. I got another story I thought you might find somewhat interesting. I did. As a matter of fact, this story caught my attention because it's got longer legs on it than you think. Well, let me tell you what this story is. Jehovah's Witnesses, we know they translate the Bible into many, many languages. And I'll give them credit for doing that. That's not an easy task to do it. But I'm going to tell you right now, they're poking their nose into areas that are getting them in hot water in some places around the world. Like where? Well, let's go with let's go with Chile. I'll say the whole country of Chile and parts of Argentina. And the witnesses are ticking off a group of people there that are Indians. They're indigenous people. And the witnesses just came out with a Bible version of translated into, well, listen to this language. It's a Mapudungun language. I think I'm pronouncing it right, Mapudungun language. Now, have you ever heard of the Mapudungun language? I never did. But the witnesses, they're grabbing a hold of it. They want to produce a New World Translation in Mahudungun. Oh, my goodness. There's 250,000 people only that speak the language. And I would say, why would the witnesses even bother with a New World Translation, Mapudungun? Why would they even do that? But I know why. They're trying to get people. They're hemorrhaging. They're losing people all over the place. They're going into prisons. They're trying to recruit prisoners. They're trying to get anybody and everybody to become one of Jehovah's Witnesses to keep the numbers going. That's what a cult has to do. They have to recruit people because they have more going out the front door, more going out the back door than coming in the front door. So they got to keep recruiting to make up for it. Because who wants to belong to an organization that's going backwards? And this organization has been going backwards, but the witnesses have no idea. Oh, our kingdom halls are full. Look at we have 120 people in our congregation. Yeah, well, they just closed 3 other congregations down and sent them to yours. I mean, can these guys wake up and smell the coffee? But let me tell you why. The people in Argentina and Chile, why they're ticked off with the Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't want their Bible. Leave your Bible out of here. the people who speak this language, Mapudungun, they are known as the Mapuche tribe. I suppose they're Indian people, indigenous people. They call them Mapuche. Now, the Mapuches, they're all upset with the Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, how many people are going to be upset with the witnesses? Now we got the Mapuches in Chile and in Argentina. And what they think the witnesses are trying to do, they're making an attempt at colonizing these people and trying to bring them a religion they don't want. Friends, this has gone on throughout human history, the colonizations of different little parts of the world. The Mapuches don't want it, so they are condemning the Jehovah's Witnesses. They're rejecting any bid whatsoever to introduce an outside religion through the language. And this they don't want to change. They want to remain the people they are. They don't want alien people like the Watchtower coming in and messing their lives up. So the Mapuches, maybe we can get them to join the apostates. Maybe, the more the merrier here. But would you really, I don't know how many Bibles are actually in the Mapudungun. Mapudungun. I'll spell it for you. It's M-A-P-U, Mapu, right? Then it's D-U-N, dun, and then G-U-N, dun. So Mapudungun. That's the language. And the Watchtower now has a New World Translation. They're trying to slip in and take over the Mapuche tribe. Jeez, these guys are poking their nose in everything around the world, and that's why they're getting in trouble. Well, let's open up the lines. Is there anyone who would like to come on and say something? If you like to, all you have to do is hit *6. Jay Hess wasn't on today, so we kind of moved our JW World News up. But if you want to say something, hit *6 and come on and say hello to us. We're so glad that we still have many people listening in on YouTube. And I want to thank you guys on YouTube. Boy, I see you making comments like crazy. And thank you for our YouTube audience. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm just so happy to see the Watchtower crumbling. And I believe you guys are too. It really is really good because these guys have hurt so many people. And we don't want to see them gaining strength. We don't want to see them moving forward. We want to see these guys out of business. I don't want the Watchtower organization reformed. I want them out of business for the people that they have hurt. And really, as I've always said on our program, I don't have a soft spot from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet for the Watchtower organization. Now, the Jehovah's Witness people, I know many of them and I love them. But the Watchtower organization is a corrupt, deceitful organization that deliberately is harming you, and they know it. So I'm glad I'm out. As I say, Satan kicked me out of his organization, and I'm glad for that. And did you want to speak up? Go ahead. You're on with us. All right. Do we have a caller? Go ahead, caller. You're coming in now. Go ahead.
Hey,
Yeah,
I'm Rick.
Hold on 1 second. You got to shut your phone off, guy. I told you that before. Your TV, whatever you got going, it's echoing. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah. What you want to say, guy?
Oh, about the foreign language.
Yeah.
All those remote translation offices are considered sub-Bethels, substitute Bethels for the ones that are getting closed off. Sign language is no different. And the Fort Lauderdale American Sign Language, that's considered a sub-Bethel because it's considered Watchtower property. I just want to pass this out there.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, guy, for doing that. No, you're right. I researched that myself. Yes, it is. It's a step below Bethel. Good. Thank you very much, Guy, for sharing that with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Did we have another caller want to speak up? You're on with us. You're on 6 screens. JW
Yeah,
World.
hello, Mr. Fearon.
Yes, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I just want to say hello to everybody here on a Sunday, and my heart goes out to the XJWs that have been interviewed, and all of them, as a matter of fact. And as we have heard today on there, and has been brought out before on the program, some of these things that the Jehovah's Witnesses have got in trouble for in other countries is not because of their belief system, but because of the fact that they're into imposing their will on somebody way too much, which they shouldn't be. If they were just there as a missionary or something like that, they probably wouldn't be on that much trouble, but they get themselves involved in everything. And so there's the problem right there, just like Malawi and everything like that. And another comment I want to make too is I wish that some of these states that are having problems with the reporting of, child sex, I couldn't think of the word, but child molestation and so forth is good enough for now. And other sex offenses that's been perpetrated by the churches and all that. I wish them success in passing some of the legislation and so forth, but as has been brought out on the program before, that penitent privilege is not the problem, but the problem is, because cases have not been won by somebody coming forward out of penitent privilege, but they've been coming forward out of victims, giving their testimony. And so if we can get the victims out of the woodwork and so forth and come forward, that does not come under penitent privilege whatsoever, and neither does covering up a felony in, just about all the penitent privilege states that I know. The penitent, it does not include covering up a felony. That's exempted, and people can go to the police for that. But the best solution is the victims come forward, go to the police, get these people prosecuted.
Well, Ken, that is a gold star answer. That right. Get the victims to talk, but and they're starting to. But so many victims have been so traumatized, and it's even embarrassing. People never used to like to talk about this, but now, because so much of it is happening, no one's going to blame a young child because some pervert molested them. We're all understanding this now, and it's bigger than we all think. But yes, go to the police. If you're even a young person and you say, hey, someone did this to me, you go to the police. You call them on the phone and say, can you send a cop here? I want to talk to them. Call the police and then let them do the investigating. Right. Forget the penitent privilege. If they're going to.
Yes, absolutely. If I was a pastor of a church here in Michigan, I know Massachusetts and other states too, there is penitent privilege and there is some issues that are covered by that. But covering up a felony is not covered by that. As a matter of fact, if I was a pastor of a church and several people talked to me about all kinds of stuff, but a victim come up to me and said, that somebody is molesting them or somebody is causing them trouble or everything like that, that is exempt from penitent privilege, because a victim come forward, and what I would do to that victim, I would say, okay, I'd talk to them and see what they got to say, and I'd say, all right, let's call the police and report that. Or if a victim or somebody come forward and just give me a suspect, I would monitor the situation. I wouldn't be hasty and passing judgment, but I would monitor the situation. And if there was evidence there of a felony, go to the police, because the sooner that people do that, the sooner this stuff is going to come to an end.
Well, good comment. And really, I do. I'll give you a gold star for that, because that's true. That's true. And you have to, I guess, understand the mindset of a witness. They're so scared to death to go to the police that they're going to get disfellowshipped on top of it all. But who cares? You've been molested. Go report the creep. Thank you, Ken. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you have a good day. And everybody, God bless and be with you. And we'll talk to you again next week.
Hey, Ken, just while you're on there, I guess you guys get some snow up there in the northern peninsula of Michigan?
Yes, they did get some snow about 50 miles from us here, and about 100 miles in Marquette, Michigan, and up in the Keweenaw Peninsula. But Escanaba, we got some bad windstorms, couple of bad windstorms. Then we got a couple more nice days. and it cooled off, and it was awful windy, but it isn't too bad right now. But
Yeah,
Michigan is known as the banana belt here and so forth.
well, I was thinking about you. Why do they call it banana belt? Just curious. They don't grow bananas there, I'm sure.
It's a little bit warmer here, and if we don't get as much snow here, generally speaking, but we're capable of having some bad snowstorms, but it usually not until say late November to December. But if we have a nice mild winter, the snow usually holds off till December.
Well, there you go.
But if you go down a little bit further south to Wisconsin, some of their places over there, except northern Wisconsin, they don't get snow that's going to stay there until say around Christmas. But it's about a month earlier or so over here, all depending on the situation. But so far, it's nothing to complain about compared to what they had in other parts of the country.
Well, I saw that, and I'm saying, man, to get a foot of snow up in Michigan in October still, that's terrible. Well, thank you, Ken, for sharing those stories with us, and always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and you have a good day. God bless you.
Appreciate it. Well, that's Ken. He's up there in northern Michigan. Friends, I mean, do you like cold? That's cold up there, I'm sure. But anyways, I'm glad you came on with us today, and we'll be back with you next week. Jay Hass didn't come on. We wish him a speedy recovery. But, we've had a lot of people listening into the program here today, and I really appreciate your presence. And we do the Sunday programming every other Sunday here on the 6 Screens. So we won't have a Sunday program next week, but coming up on November 20th, we have 3 brand new programs starting. So here on Sunday, we're trying to really boost up the attendance on Sunday. So we got some great programs you're going to really, really enjoy. And we got the Christian Court. That's going to be one program. And this is where, there's many gray areas that Christians don't know how to really respond. Like, for example, let's just go with, what do you do when it comes to going to war? Does a Christian always take the position of a gun and go shoot? Or do they take the position of, no, I'm going to go in a hospital or whatever. I don't want to get involved in that. So we're going to, these are non-sanctifying points, so to speak. It's something that's not going to keep you out of the kingdom. Another one would be concerning when you go in for communion. Do you drink grape juice? Do you drink wine? That's not going to keep you out of the kingdom, whatever you take, but it's going to be an interesting program. So we're looking forward to it's called The Christian Court. So that's one of the new programs that will be coming up here on the 6 Screens Network starting on November 20th. So again, thank you. And we'll see you next Saturday night for Returning to Light with Roland from the United Kingdom and Chad out of Illinois. And I want you guys to know I really appreciate your presence. And I want you always to stand tall and, tell everyone you come in contact with. Tell everyone how evil the organization is, whether it's the cashier at the grocery store, the attendant at the gas station, or whether it be the mailman. Let everybody know how evil and how cultish the Jehovah's Witness organization is. Get the message out. We want these guys gone. So keep standing tall. Don't you ever give in, up or out. And the last one, leaving the Watchtower, by all means, turn off the new light. Thank you very much. See you next week.